For new Sisters of Battle players, Miracle Dice are the main army rule we get. Page 1 of our index tells you all about it, and presumably the Codex will have exactly the same army rule as well. It starts with the 2 ways to gain Miracle Dice. That is not correct. There are 6 ways to gain Miracle Dice, not just these 2. You should be drowning in Miracle Dice. But even these 2 in this rule are very deceptive in the way they're talking about them. It is not giving you the full picture. Now, this video is not about how spending them works or how good an army rule it is, just the gaining of Miracle Dice. So, part 1. If your army is Adepta Sororitas, you gain 1 Miracle Dice at the start of each turn. What is a turn, though? It is not a game turn. If you're getting 5 Miracle Dice per game and the game lasts 5 turns, that's not correct. It is per player turn. When both of you have had a turn, that is called a battle round, and that is assuming that there are just 2 players. If you were playing a 3-player game or more, then rules as written, you would get 1 Miracle Dice at the start of each player's turn. If it's 2 versus 2, then there are 2 sides, 2 factions. You don't get a Miracle Dice for every person that's playing the game. Thinking just of standard 40k, I take a turn, you take a turn, alternates back and forth until both of us have had 5 turns, or we decide to give up the game because we've run out of time, or it's very obvious who's going to win and there's not a lot of fun left to get. When you've each had a turn, that is a completed battle round. That is the terminology used, and it's far less confusing than previous editions where they had turns and game turns. So through this one method, you get 10 Miracle Dice throughout the game, not 5. I know a lot of you have been gaining just 5. If you'd been around in 9th edition, you would know that partway through, it did change from being once at the start of the battle round to once at the start of the player turn. So several of you will be more experienced in how this is meant to work. Good. Okay, the second part. Gaining Miracle Dice when a unit dies. Now that can seem deceptive because look at the leader rule. As soon as a bodyguard is destroyed, any characters become their own separate unit. And while you would still resolve attacks against them, if there were still attacks left to resolve from one shooting enemy or one attacking enemy in close combat, whenever the unit dies, you get a Miracle Dice. That is also when a character dies. So if you had a Cannoness and a Battle Sister squad, that's 2 Miracle Dice when the unit gets wiped out entirely. If you had a Hospitaller and a Palatine in a Sister of Battle squad, and all of them were wiped out, whether separately or individually, that is 3 Miracle Dice. 1 for the Palatine, 1 for the Hospitaller, 1 for the Sisters of Battle squad. But hey, this is just Adepta Sororitas. You go into battle, you expect martyrdom. Whatever it is, tiny rock to die on, that's where you die. They are literally the army that dies on a hill. And unlike in previous editions, it is anything with the Adepta Sororitas faction keyword. So your Archoflagellants get it, your Crusaders get it, your Missionaries get it. The units we don't think of as Sisters of Battle have the Adepta Sororitas faction keyword. But if you had an allied armiger and it gets destroyed, you don't gain a Miracle Dice for that. The Miracle Dice you get from units dying may not necessarily be the best. You can statistically make them better by having an Imagifier nearby. A lot of your units will die. Imagifiers are useful for getting better dice, which means that their sacrifice will not be in vain. So maximizing Miracle Dice by having lots of small units and characters is a good way to go. But rather than spin off into a tangent, as I do often, the next video can look at such a list. So that's a reason to subscribe. So there's the 2 ways to gain Miracle Dice that Games Workshop explicitly tells you. What about the others? You must look far deeper into the Adepta Sororitas Index. We have enhancements. Saintly Example is an enhancement you can add to a character as long as you're using the Hallowed Martyrs detachment. In the Index, that's the only detachment. In the Codex, there should be more, as well as the Hallowed Martyrs, which should have this same enhancement. I'm discussing this pre-Codex. This gives you D3 bonus Miracle Dice, and there's a hack to it. So you have your Missionary, they are the Saintly Example. They die, generate D3 plus 1 Miracle Dice because it is D3 additional Miracle Dice. Not instead of getting 1, you get D3. It is the normal number plus D3. So you get between 2 and 4 Miracle Dice for their passing. However, if you use Divine Intervention, well, for all rules purposes, you count as dead. Mostly that's there so that the enemy still scores victory points for, say, assassination, and in Crusade, you will still have to take an out-of-action test at the end of the game, because technically, your guy did die. But it also means that when you come back, yeah, your character's still alive, but you still generate those miracle dice from having died. Martyrdom isn't necessarily forever in the 40k rules, but when you come back and die a second time, potentially, then you get another D3 plus 1 miracle dice. This isn't a once per game thing. It works when the bearer is destroyed, and explicitly Divine Intervention works on a unit that was just destroyed. This is the terminology we use. It's consistent. So even without the enhancement, dying gets you 1 miracle dice, dying and coming back and dying again with the stratagem gets you 2. So that's way number 3 to get miracle dice. Way number 4, Sisters of Battle sitting around drinking tea. As long as you have a Sister of Battle unit, the regular Sisters of Battle, not Adepta Sororitas, this is where the weird differentiation of different terms comes in. Sisters of Battle. They sit on an objective, and that is per objective, not per sister squad. So a unit of 10 stretched across 2 objectives that you control, you will generate 2 extra miracle dice in your command phase. But having 2 squads of 10 or 2 squads of 5 that have been split with an immolator on the same objective, you just get the 1 extra miracle dice. It's per objective, not per squad. This works even while battle shocked. However, you do have to control the objective, but if you control it through other Adepta Sororitas models, then you'll be fine. Even though your objective control is 0, other models control it, it's an objective you control, the Sisters of Battle are on that objective, you get the miracle dice. There's also the option to add a Dogmata, because when you add a Dogmata, you add 1 to the objective control score of a unit. If your objective control score was set to 0 because you failed a battle shock test, the order is you set things to the number, then you do modifiers. You set it to 0, the Dogmata adds 1, you now have 1 objective control, that is sufficient to control an objective, assuming there's no enemies around. So splitting a Sisters of Battle squad with an immolator to give you 2 Sisters of Battle squads, they have the same special rule. It's not that the special rule gets transferred to one unit of 5 and not the other unit of 5, they are the same kind of squad with the same special rules. So if you have them on separate objectives, then you're going to get 2 miracle dice, 1 from each of the objectives. So we're already getting a lot of miracle dice, and we're going to want to spend them, but there are ways to make them much better when we spend them, but I'll look at that later. Way number 5 to generate miracle dice. The Simulacrum. In previous editions it did a whole different thing, because you could only do 1 act of faith. This let you do a 2nd act of faith, but only with units with a Simulacrum. Its rules have changed now, and it generates you a miracle dice if your unit kills an enemy unit. While it may not happen that often on the Sisters of Battle, the Dominions have a Simulacrum as well as the regular sister squads. That's because they're made from the same box. And the Dominions can do that rather well. You have 10 sisters, they all have assault weapons, 4 of them can have flamers or melter guns or the Artificer Stormbolters, the things that do killing. So they are more likely to generate you miracle dice from murdering your foes. The 6th way to generate miracle dice is through the little cherub. They're cute little things. The Sisters of Battle have them, the Dominion squads have them, and the Retributor squads get 2. In previous editions they used to reload the guns for the Sisters to let them shoot multiple times. In this edition all of the little cherubs do the same thing. When the unit spends a miracle dice, you get to roll up a new miracle dice. Effectively, though you had to spend 1 to do it, you have gained 1 miracle dice. It's a good way to cycle out bad miracle dice. If you only have a 3, that's not going to do that much. I mean, it'll pass an armor save, but alternatively, you could use that as a hit roll, especially on a very important weapon like a melter gun that you want to have hit. Though I would prefer to spend it on the wound roll or the damage roll. That is one way of cycling out the bad ones. You use 3, get rid of it, you generate a new one because of the cherub. That is once per game though. Since the cherub, the Defenders of the Faith, the Simulacrum, and being destroyed are all ways to generate miracle dice from the Battle Sister squad, that is why they are an integral part of the Adepta Sororitas army, though in theory you can run an army without them. So we're generating a lot of miracle dice. If you want to spend all those miracle dice, good ones are best spent on damage, bad dice, Use the Palatine because you can throw any kind of miracle dice, no matter the number, through her Rapturous Blows ability. Consider also the Dialogus to turn any miracle dice into a 6, which can be made better with the Triumph of St. Catherine. And that is the video I suggest you look at next. My darlings and viewers, drown in glorious miracle dice, and have a great day of 40k.